I'm so happy you're wearing one today. Kym Illman's scarf collection.
I did meet George Harrison one night during a Grand Prix in Adelaide. He was having dinner with Jackie Stewart, Johnny Herbert and Damon Hill. A Czech model, nude in a meat cabinet.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, today I am beyond excited. I can't tell you how much of a fan I am of this man. Today's guest on the Cool Down podcast, I can barely believe it myself because I've been following this man for a long time. Top don when it comes to Formula One photography, F1 royalty as far as I'm concerned. Welcome to the Cool Down podcast, Kym Illman. How are you today?
Well, they are magnificent words to start off with, so I'm well happy to hear that you've discovered what I do and you like it.
Absolutely, mate. Love it. And you know, you're not doing too bad in terms of like socially, successful F1 photographers. I mean, you're up there, almost 100k Instagram followers now, over 30k on YouTube. And yeah, well, I guess the first question that's on everyone's lips, and I'll obviously ask this to everyone, is how are you adjusting to life in lockdown in Perth? What's it like over there? Because obviously, guests from all over the world, it's all different all over the place. How's life for you?
Well, I've come to my beach house in Lancelin, which is 90 minutes north of Perth, and it's no change for me. It's a very small town, 600 odd people here. I've got a place on the beach. You don't see anyone, so we can go out to the sand dunes and play on the Lancelin sand dunes. We can drive down to different parts of the coast here, and the only thing we can't do is actually drive back to Perth unless you get permission, because we've got these 9 areas, intrastate areas that you can't cross. But luckily I've got a business back in Perth, so I've been back there twice, I think, for maybe 3 hours. So 6 hours in Perth and the rest has been spent up here in Lancelin, which is quite a beautiful spot. And if you have a look at lancelin.com.au or Lancelin on Instagram or Lancelin on Facebook, I run all of those 3 sites.
Absolutely. Be sure to check those out. It sounds absolutely dreamy, mate. I'm not going to lie. Absolutely beautiful. As a Perth resident, have you ever crossed paths with Daniel Ricciardo at all? Kind of in and around Perth?
Well, no, I've never. Actually, Daniel used to come up here for holidays at Lancelin, and I caught him once down at the shops and recognised him and said hello. But I know his father reasonably well and his mother. They've come up and stayed with us a couple of times. And look, I've not seen Daniel out and about in Perth because he's rarely in Perth. If he's anywhere, he's out at his farm, which is in the country. And I don't go out much in Perth.
Fair enough. But I suppose it's you got such a. I know Perth has its own little kind of personality distinct of the rest of Australia. I feel I've heard that mentioned quite a bit in terms of you've got your own little kind of echo chamber almost there, and your own little country within a country. I mean, it's a beautiful part of the world that I'd love to visit, because I've been fortunate enough to go to Australia a few times, but never to Perth. That's very much on my list. But anyway, so today, well, let's start in terms of the Formula One related questions. And obviously I've been doing a bit of research, and I'm already, as I've already proclaimed, I'm a huge fan of yours. And in terms of your kind of story getting into F1, I was actually quite surprised that you only started shooting in F1 in 2017, which I think that will surprise a lot of people, because you've got people in the industry who have been there for, I can imagine you know some guys who have been doing it for a very, very long time. But in terms of your first kind of furore into Formula One, in terms of that professional photography, like what compelled you to jump into that in the first place? What was the kind of, I'm going to give that a go?
All right, well, I went to Abu Dhabi in 2016. I paid the money, went with Red Bull, and I did their hospitality thing, the paddock, and it was great. And obviously part of the package was that you get to go down into the garage with Red Bull, and you stand at the back of the garage, you put the headphones on, and you hear Daniel talking to the engineer. It's all very quiet, and then they talk and they discuss what's going on. And I thought, well, this is fantastic. I quite like this. I've always liked Formula One, never loved it, but always liked it. And I must admit, since Daniel, being a Perth guy from the same school as the school that my sons went to, since he entered the competition, I had a bit more of a heightened interest. And so at that point I thought, right, I'll see what's involved in getting accredited. And I did. I made the enquiries and I applied for accreditation, and I put an interesting case forward that obviously caught somebody's eye, and I was lucky enough to be accredited for testing in Barcelona in 2017. So that was great. I went along there because I said, look, I'm going to be there anyway because I'd already gone and booked another thing with Red Bull. And so I got accredited for testing and didn't make a shit of myself. So they accredited me for Melbourne because it's my home race. And then with F1, when you're getting started, you get accredited race by race. So 2 weeks out, they tell you whether you got accreditation for the race in 2 weeks' time. So I got accredited for China, and then I got Bahrain, and then I managed to get a gig with Sutton's, shooting with Sutton's motorsport images, which was a huge start for me because I was pretty raw, I'll be honest with you. I was a little bit, well, not clueless, but certainly out of a fish out of water sort of thing. But anyway, I did the whole year with Sutton's, and I thought, oh, well, that was great. Look, I might do 6 races next year because I've got a business in Perth with 50 staff and an office in Singapore, which is called Messages on Hold. And I thought, well, I did what I wanted to do. I did 1 year. Maybe that's enough. I'll do a couple of races. But then I got a couple of races in 2018, and I thought, oh, bugger it, I'll keep going. I quite like it. And I didn't ask Sutton's for another gig because I thought I was only going to do 6 weeks or 6 races. So what was that? Probably 3 trips overseas. And so I didn't think it right to try and get another gig full time when if I was going to do a few races. So yeah, I did the rest of that season, and about 5 races before the end of 2018, I discovered Instagram, and I really had no interest in it and thought it was all a bit of a bullshit thing. But I thought, oh well, I'll make an effort, and I did make an effort. And now it's turned into somewhat of a laborious task, an enjoyable one, but a lot of time goes into it, and having done that though, I've grown quite an audience, and it's been an exercise in marketing that I've thoroughly enjoyed.
Absolutely. I mean, I saw on one of the videos you posted on your channel about kind of talking essentially about this in terms of your start and how kind of getting those images uploaded within, you know, a few minutes of taking them essentially helped kind of snowball your Instagram and really set your kind of point of difference as such and your niche within that, because people clearly obviously have an appetite for it. But I mean, it sounds like the most amazing job in the world to follow the circus that is Formula One. I guess, have you in terms of in your past, has any of your work required the level of travel and all that has come with following? Because I know you said in 2017, in your first year, you ended up doing every race. Is that right?
Yep.
So how did you find all of that? Were you kind of used to traveling a lot, or was that a bit of a shock to the system? Because it's quite the undertaking.
I travel a lot, and previously, over a period of 2.5 years, I spent 26 weeks in Africa shooting a book called Africa on Safari. So I'd go, and initially, once again, like F1, I thought, well, in fact, I didn't even want to go on the first safari. My wife suggested it would be a good thing, and I kept putting her off for years and years. And then eventually she just said, look, I booked the flights to South Africa, so you do the rest. And I thought, rightio, well, I did my homework, and I said, right, we're not even going to stop in South Africa. We're going on to Kenya. And so we did a 2-week safari and came back, and well, 8 weeks later, we were back in Africa again, came back, 8 weeks later, back there again, and then we just did these safaris for a heck of a long time, and finally did a book which was picked up by National Geographic, by all people. It just blew me away in Germany. They did the German version of it, and I had a publisher in England who published Africa on Safari in English, and yeah, it sold out the first edition, and then I went and bought too many copies of the second edition, so I'm lumbered with those. But anyway, that was a great experience, and then I thought, right, well, I'm done with African photography, and this has stepped up to take its place.
I guess it's, how different is it? I mean, obviously some animals are pretty quick, so you've got that same level of following. I don't know. I mean, what are the kind of, is it quite similar in a way, actually shooting animals and F1, or is it quite different? What's the kind of? It's
completely different. Most wildlife photography that I would shoot would be sitting for 2 hours watching a lion sleep, and then it gets up and walks away. That's what that's all about. There's lots of sitting around waiting, very few fast chases. You very rarely see a kill. It's like capturing a crash at Formula One. You very rarely see a crash in front of you. So they are completely different. And of course, with a car, you know exactly where it's going to be on the track unless it's come to some grief. But animals, they can go anywhere and often do. And sometimes you can't even get off the road. You've got to stay on the road and shoot 200 metres away. And yeah, it's a completely different animal.
Did you ever have any like hairy moments when you were like, oh, this lion's getting a bit close. I'm a bit, we might need to...
Yeah, 3 that I'll tell you about. All 3 were in Mana pools in Zimbabwe. The first one was we're on foot and we'd found this lion who was mating with its female, and we were walking up to it, and this guide we had who stands behind us, he's got a gun, but there are no bullets in the gun. They're in his pocket. Oh. So he says, right, this thing's going to come at you and it's going to stop about 20 metres away. So be ready, it's going to come. And sure enough, it comes at you ferociously. It stops. And we go, oh, exactly what he said. Does it again, second time. And he says, right, that's enough. We walk away. So that was the first time I've ever sort of been a little bit threatened, but I was confident. The second time was in a different camp, but with the same guide. And this female lion came at us from nowhere, and we didn't even see it. And that was terrifying. Luckily, I was second in the queue, so my wife would have copped it if it had come any further. But it stopped and just warned us. And then there was a third time where an elephant charged us, but it had its ears out, which is fine. It's not going to stop you. It's going to give you a bit of a fright. If it's got its ears back, I'm pretty sure that's the case. Ears back, you're in all sorts of strife.
That sounds pretty hairy. But I guess in terms of, just to tie that back to F1, because of course there are dangers with motorsport. Have you ever been in a position where you're kind of trackside and there's been an accident right in front of you, and because I know at certain tracks, and as there's always a degree of risk, right, as a marshal or as a photographer. Has there ever been a moment when you've been a bit like, wow, like that was right in front of me, or anything a bit hairy in terms of in Formula One?
The only time I've felt threatened was in Japan. It must have been not last year, the year prior. We were around the back of the track and we were standing at a section, and Valtteri was coming down the hill, and he gets a bit wide and he puts his wheels onto the curbing, and he comes straight at us. It must be the corner before R130 or 130R, whatever that is. So I just bent down to pick a camera up, and I picked it up and I looked up, and he's fishtailing it all over the place, and he's coming at me at a rate of knots, and I just went to the ground, and luckily he went past us, missed us, but then crashed probably 150 metres later. That's the only time I've ever had any real... I felt I was in danger. I did have an opportunity to snap Lance Stroll at Budapest after the chicane, where he's done it was a 360 right in front of me. But at all times, there was no danger to me. I thought, well, he's clearly not going to hit me. So I just kept my finger on the shutter and got some lovely shots.
There you go. I guess it pays off when you've got the bottle to keep that finger on the clicker, for sure. But and then in terms of the job as well, in terms of like the danger side of things we've spoken about, but in terms of like, again, on paper it's this, it looks like an incredible thing to do. What would you say is the most difficult or kind of stressful part of that job? I mean, my guess would be the file management, because I know that can be an absolute pain in the bum. But is there anything else particularly that kind of stands out as being a bit of you just wish it wasn't part of the job?
It is not enough time, not being able to be everywhere. It is not knowing where things are happening. You'll get back to the media centre and you'll walk past someone's desk and you'll look over their shoulder and you go, where was that? Oh, there was a thing down there. Far out. Didn't know that was on. But then obviously there's other times where people walk past my computer and say, where was that? And I go, over there. Oh, we didn't know that was on. Look, you can't be everywhere, and we accept that. But yeah, it's a real challenge. And I'll give you an idea of how I would work, say on a Friday, which is our busiest day. You get there early, you'll spend 3 hours waiting for drivers to come in and looking for stuff in the paddock. You'll go back and edit, put a few pictures up, maybe 200, and then you'll go out once again into the paddock and shoot the drivers going into the garage. And I'm always probably one of the last ones to shoot them going into the garage because I don't care about the first few minutes of each session. I'm more interested in the people and the cars, but obviously once all the drivers are in cars, there's no good hanging around the paddock because you're going to get bugger all. So then I'll head out and I'll take shots. I'll come back afterwards, get the drivers coming out of the garage. I'll then go back to the media centre and I will edit, and I'll probably go through 1,000 odd photos, pare it down to a couple of hundred, edit them, put them up. That's an hour gone. Maybe an hour and a half gone. I've got an hour then to go back out and shoot guys in the paddock going to the garages. Go and do the same thing again. Afterwards, I'll probably put up another 300 or 400, 200 or 300 photos there. Then go back out in the paddock and do the late afternoon stuff. So there is no gaps. There's no, I'll go and have an hour lunch somewhere at Ferrari and swan around. It just doesn't happen.
Full on. Brilliant. I can imagine it's incredibly rewarding though when you get, like, in terms of, when have you ever had a moment when you've kind of taken a shot and been like, straight away? Like, do you tend to know straight away when you've got an absolute banger, or is it a bit of a you don't really know until the edit suite afterwards?
Sometimes I know and sometimes I don't, and I'll give an example of when I didn't. I took a photo of Daniel Ricciardo in Hockenheim coming onto the grid with the grandstand full behind him, wet spray coming off his tyres, and I thought... I know the one. I thought, that's a nice shot.
Great shot.
But I didn't realise how good it was until I went and edited it, and I didn't realise even then until Daniel actually shared the picture on his page, and it went bunter. And I thought, oh, okay, it's a really good picture. And then I looked at it again. I thought, oh, it's a good picture because you rarely see those tyres on the car. You rarely see the spray coming off. You don't see another car in the background. And the fact that the car is probably 10 metres from me, coming straight towards me with the grandstand, people just can't get their head around. How did you get that shot? Were you standing on the track? Yeah. Did you feel threatened? Of course I was standing on the track, but it's only cars coming onto the grid. And the guy next to me has got the jack. So I figure I'll stand 30 centimetres behind him, just over his shoulder, or probably just on his waist, and I should be safe. Yeah.
So what focal length, I've got to ask, what focal length did you shoot that at? Do you remember?
It was with a 70 to 200 lens. I'm guessing about 100. And obviously as he gets closer, you wind it out so you can get him and Max in the background.
Absolutely. Beautiful photo. I'll leave a picture of it on screen so everyone can see. So Kym, in terms of the job, do you have a particular day that sits there as being kind of the best, a particularly memorable day for whatever reason? Is there one that just always comes to mind?
Oh yeah.
A particular race?
Race day in Hockenheim last year, and I did a whole video on this on my YouTube channel, and it started out okay. First corner was wet. No one went off, and it was a good start. I got some reasonable pictures through the wire, and then I made the fluky, correct decision to walk anti-clockwise around the track. I'm pretty sure that's anti-clockwise, yep. And went up to the last and second last corners, and boy, did it turn it on for me. First of all, we had Carlos spinning, we had Max spinning, we had Charles running into the barrier, we had Nico coming off. We had Lewis coming off, but I didn't even see that. I don't even know what I was doing that he came off. So it was the most marvellous time. And then I went back and shot the drivers coming out of the FIA garage that don't make the top three, and I got a spectacular shot of Lance Stroll, absolutely buoyant. And I've never really seen Lance with a beaming grin on his face. So it was lovely to get those shots. And then went out and shot Daniil Kvyat as he came out on the podium. And I couldn't believe it. He was so funny. He shook everybody's hand, all the dignitaries, as he came onto the platform. And you never see that, ever. They don't do that. But he was making the most of every second on that platform, on that podium.
That was an amazing day for sure. I can imagine. Did you kind of know beforehand about the kind of ice rink part of the track? Like, that was just a fluke?
I had no idea. I had none whatsoever.
Well, it's a shame they're not going back there, because then imagine like next year at the race, if it's raining again, if it was at Hockenheim, every single photographer would be just waiting, primed.
As there were only two of us on that corner.
Really?
And for most of the race, it was only me.
Wow.
bizarre.
Hit an absolute jackpot there, Kym.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And then, obviously, to flip that question, in terms of, is there a particular difficult day that you would say kind of was the hardest, or like one that you just didn't get what you wanted, a frustrating day, worst day as such?
No, I can't think of one. Often, maybe not exactly the answer to your question, but I've had probably 2 or 3 days where I've just gone and left the track and thought, what am I wasting my time doing this for? But within a day, I'd forgotten that day, and I was back on the buzz that you can well imagine it is, because it's a rare privilege to get that close to the action. And sometimes, and you might have seen some of my videos where we are 30 centimetres from the tyres of these cars, or 3 metres from a car, or 4 metres from a car doing 300 k's an hour. So it's you're very much, in those instances, you're very much alive.
Absolutely. Do you have do you have kind of a particular favourite race to shoot? Whether that's kind of a particular place in the world that you just overall love?
Monaco, by a mile. It's so easy to get around there, and when you compare it, say, to Baku, where you've got to get on a golf cart, and if you don't get up to the old part of town 30 minutes before the start of the session, you have to take a golf cart, which is probably 12 minutes. You have to walk about 15 minutes to get to where you go. Monaco, you could walk from one end of the track in 15 minutes, no problem at all. And along the way, there are a myriad of spots to shoot from. And of course, you've got this beautiful backdrop of the harbour. You've got all the glamour. You've got the proximity. This is where we get the closest to the cars of any track. And I also feel confident. I've only been doing this for 3 years. And as you said before, guys have been doing it for 25. So they know all the spots. Well, I'm still getting, I guess, a grip of it, but I know Monaco reasonably well, and I know how to get to spots, because often it's pretty tricky, because you'll say, I want to go over there and shoot, but to get over there, you might have to walk a kilometre. You have to go over bridges and under. And when you're new, no one tells you anything. It's not in their interest to tell you anything, except I've got a few guys who look out for me, and it's been just fantastic to have some of the best guys in the world constantly look over my shoulder and go, a shit shot, get rid of that, or that's a good shot, but next time try that. So I've been very fortunate in that respect.
It sounds like an incredible, I mean, again, I love my photography, and to do that as a job, I could just, that would be amazing, not going to lie. I'd love to hopefully get to a few races when the season eventually starts, with my camera, with my EOS R, start clicking away. I might see you around, Kym. So I've got to ask as well, in terms of, I feel I can safely assume Melbourne this year. Were you there on the day when that was all cancelled?
Oh yeah, I was right amongst it, and it was a real buzz to see what was happening, because I've got all these people in the teams, and they're feeding me all this information, which is invaluable when you're a photographer. I remember somebody said, oh, you want to get out the front there at the gate, because they're all queued up and they're not opening the gates. And of course I go out there and I get some great shots of the crowd, and when you tell a story, as I like to do, that picture tells a story. People waiting behind locked gates. You can't replicate that. But with every hour something was happening. When we get, I get a lot of people who send me stuff, like messages from Europe. They'll be watching, or they'll be trolling the internet. Oh, Kym, have you heard this? I go, oh, I'm going to have a look at that. So yeah, it was very exciting as it went by. And in fact, I was told early in the morning by one of the guys in the teams that both Seb and Kimmy had gone on the plane earlier. Now, that's a great story to get early. And look, I do a bit of newsy sort of stuff, but when you get fed that sort of stuff and you've got a picture that you can run with it, well, yeah, that gets a lot of attention. And I like that. I like the ability to be able to put up a picture and put a story behind it that interests people. And a lot of people that were waiting out of that gate contacted me that night. I did a live stream that night. They said, we were getting more information from you than any of the news services. And I thought, well, that's lovely, because I'm on the ground and I can put something out, and if it's not 100% right, well, big deal. I'm not a news service that has to worry about that sort of thing.
Yeah, so just in terms of how it could have potentially, from your point of view, been maybe communicated a bit better, because it did seem, I mean, I stayed up all night, obviously being in the UK, and just like watched all of this unfold and it was changing all the time, kind of what could they maybe have done better? Because I know a lot of fans kind of, with obviously a lot of people are in Melbourne, but a lot of people fly in from all over the world to see that race. So there was a lot of frustration amongst fans.
I'm not sure how you would have done it any better. I just know that there were so many vested interests, with the Premier saying no, of Victoria, look, we're not having it, and then Formula One has to, I guess, tell a whole lot of people first before they tell the spectators. It was a bizarre and surreal thing, and I think in the end they just had their hands tied, Formula One, and they could do nothing about it, and they just had to go through this, I guess, protocol. Because they don't want certain people getting it and running with the story early. They need to tell all their corporates. And there were people in there who were in the paddock club who got in there. You probably know this already, but the car, the show car, was running around with corporate punters in there and actually came off. So they had to all get kicked out at 9:30 in the morning, and it was fascinating to be involved with, I must admit.
I can imagine, because that is as much as it was a shit show, essentially. That is going to be a moment that will always be remembered in terms of the history. Like, it's pretty unprecedented, right? And we can't see that happen again anytime soon. So to have been there on the day and captured what was, what was a massive cock up.
Well, I saw Daniil Kvyat drive in the car at about, just after the gates were due to open. I thought, he's the only driver I've seen today. So I raced back, hoped to get a shot of him walking into the paddock, but I don't even know where he went. I doubt he even got out of his car, because there's only 2 entrances to the paddock and he's unlikely to go to the second one, and I waited at the first, but I never saw him. But a number of drivers hung around for a few days afterwards and at least enjoyed Melbourne, but bizarre.
Yeah, it's true. Crazy scenes, crazy times. So then, I guess, obviously, no one knows when. I suppose I should ask, have you got any idea when the season, they're talking about Austria potentially, but I don't know, do you get any, I guess you're getting information as quickly as anyone else, right?
Yeah, and oftentimes I get it, same as you, by reading it somewhere on the internet, but yeah, hoping for Austria, hoping for back-to-backs in Silverstone, and then I thought they were aiming for back-to-backs in Hungary, but that's not going to happen with I wouldn't have thought so, given their government said nothing can take place with a big event, and certainly F1's a big event, even with no crowd there. It's over 1,000 people if you just have teams and officials. Yeah. So, and I don't even know what photographers will be allowed. They might not have any media. We are all up in the air, and really it's the virus that's going to, determine when we're going to see a start.
Absolutely. Crazy times, unprecedented times. But of course, what isn't crazy and unprecedented is the future of your career. And obviously you're doing this, you've been doing this since 2017. Do you have you're going to be doing this for 5-10 years? Are you thinking that far ahead, or are you just kind of taking it as it comes? Do you have kind of a plan for the long haul?
I have no plan whatsoever. I'm just doing it for as long as I enjoy it. I work for a few drivers and a couple of sponsors at the moment. It's tricky doing it from Australia. I wish I was like you and lived in Europe, because what would be probably a £150 airfare for you might be £3,000 for me. So it's a bit of a drawback, but while I'm loving it, I'll keep doing it. And I just hope I get to go this year. See, at the moment, Australia's banned any external travel. So Daniel and I are both here in Australia, and I gather Daniel could get an exemption probably, and I probably could too, but I couldn't get back. And that's the thing. Yeah. See, in Australia, they're talking, they may not even have international air travel for Melbourne next year if we run it early in the year. They're saying that there's no guarantee that our international flights, our borders will open this year.
And then that's the idea of running a race without certain drivers or without certain teams. I don't know. To me, that just seems a bit. There was talk, obviously, with the teams at Melbourne of potentially still racing without McLaren, but I don't know. That wouldn't have sat right with me as a fan. I'd rather wait until everyone's back on board personally. But it's a tricky one, isn't it? Like, there's no, again, the issue with F1, it's an international sport. You don't have to worry just about getting national. Like, people compare it to football all the time and saying, oh, how like the football will be able to start soon enough. But that's just in terms of like the Premier League, for example, well, you only have to worry about, you only need about 100 people just to run it behind closed doors, not how many thousands you need just to put on an F1 race at all, even with no spectators. But then you've got all of the different laws, and like you said with Australia, and how they're talking about potentially they're going to give us the roadmap ahead in the UK this time next week. So that'll be interesting to see what they say. But it's such an unprecedented scenario. But of course, we'll all still be here, and we're creating content. I mean, how have you found in terms of the kind of content creation point of view, not having races to cover, but obviously still making your own videos for your channel? How have you found people have engaged with that?
Well, I've run out of ideas, quite frankly.
I'm clutching at straws as well, Kym, I promise you.
It is tough, and with Instagram, just finding pictures and stories, I went through the last 3 weeks, I thought I'll put up pictures of drivers the first time I shot them and the last time I shot them. I thought, well, that's great. That's 21 days, one post a day, done, or 20 days. And now I'm doing drivers and their trainers. So there's another 20 days, 20 posts, but I normally put up 2 or 3 pictures a day. Look, we're all in the same boat, and we're all looking for something to talk about.
Yeah, I think and people are craving kind of content as well. That's what I've kind of found with my stuff, why it's grown so well. And I've been essentially uploading the entire. It's an extended off season, right? And people still want content, and I think it's the views haven't really suffered, but obviously everyone's desperate, so we're trying our best, aren't we, Kym?
But the advertisers have certainly stopped advertising on YouTube. I would suggest their revenues are down savagely.
Yeah, mine's down about 30% in terms of my CPM, and I'm sure it's similar for you as well. So crazy times. But anyway, so we've dived into F1. In terms of let's go a bit more personal. We're talking in terms of photography specifically. This is just a question from me because I'm super interested. Like, what is your typical setup that you take to a race in terms of which camera do you take, which lenses, all of that kind of stuff?
I will take. Well, I just bought a 1DX Mark III, but typically I take 2 Mark IIs. I take a 16 to 35, a 70 to 200, a 50mm fixed, a 135 fixed, a 600mm, and then from race to race I might take one other lens, some quirky thing like a 45mm tilt shift. I'll take a computer, card readers, dongles, because the beauty of, well, not the beauty, the secret to why I think I've been successful in garnering, building this audience is because, as you said earlier, when I take a photo, if it's a good one and something happening in the paddock, 4 minutes later, it's up on Instagram. And now that, for me, it doesn't have to be the best picture in the world, but being first to market is very important. And it amazes me when I put up a picture, say, like Charles walks in and people go, oh, he's wearing so-and-so shirt, or he's got a new pair of shoes on. I go, wow, you people are just sitting there and going through in fine detail everything about that photo, and they love it. And if they see it first and they know that it's happened a few minutes ago, they're very much part of that action, and that's what I like to see, how I can get stuff up. And I must say, from time to time, I love to get a Parc Fermé shot up. When Charles won his second race in Italy, I managed to get a picture up very quickly. But that's not always the case. If you've got lousy internet, forget it. You'll sit there and you'll press that button and it'll get nearly up and stop, and it drives me crazy. But everyone else is in the same boat, trying to send photos back off their camera using an internet dongle.
Absolutely, I can imagine. And in terms of do you have a favourite lens to use? One that's the most enjoyable for you to capture?
I change my mind. Sometimes, look, 70 to 200 is just so versatile that it's a no-brainer. And typically when I go out to the paddock, I'll take a most of the time 70 to 200 and 16 to 35. So as the person or the driver gets closer to me, often they're walking, so they'll walk and you'll get them from 50 metres away, 30 metres, 20 metres. As soon as they're 20, you stop, put down the long lens, you get the wide angle out and you wait till they get a bit closer, and then you get a whack of shots out of them. So they would be the two lenses that I use the most, but once we get out on track, it's 70 to 200 probably and a 600, depending on which track. If it's Monaco, 600 is not used that often, and if you're at Silverstone, 16 to 35 is rarely used because you've got such long throws most of the time. But I like to occasionally take out just a couple of fixed lenses and challenge myself to see what shots I get. Obviously you have to walk a bit more, you have to get closer or further away, but you get a better looking picture because they're a fixed lens. And I know with my 85mm lens, which I occasionally take, and put a polarizer on it, and it's a sunny day, won't get a better photo. And really, whatever I shoot with that looks just gorgeous. It's just that it's a little bit slow in focusing, and I tend to not take it too many races because it is heavy. Yeah, but
yes.
I love that lens.
Yeah, I think I know what 85 you mean. I think I've held it before, and wow, it's quite a mass. So in terms of your kind of photographic journey, in terms of making it now a big part of what you do work-wise, and I've seen obviously your other businesses that you have, and we'll go into that in a bit, but in terms of that side of things, so before you did that, when you did that Africa Safari book, and before then, had you ever indulged in photography in a professional capacity, or was it more of a hobby, kind of side project thing?
Very much a hobby, and I always struggled. I'd look at great photographers and think, how do you get that shot? And even now, I'll look at guys' pictures and I wonder how you get it. And then I'll go out and I'll see them on track and I go, oh, that's the secret. And it must be the same too with people who don't know as much as I do, because there's lots of people who don't know as much and there's lots of people who know more. So those people who don't know as much, I can be of help to them. But those people who know more, well, they can be of help to me. But you never know everything. It's always a learning game, and absolutely. It's very easy to settle on just taking the average shot. And I'll catch myself so many times at the track. I'll walk along and I'll go, oh, I'll try this, and I'll try it for 4 or 5 minutes, and I go, what am I wasting my time for? There's shit in the background. It's never going to be a great photo, and I should have just done what I initially set out to do, was go to a spot where I know I can get a shot. And really, it's that discipline in this game to not take shit photos. And when we all take them, well, I guess the really good guys take less or fewer of them than I do. But it's a real challenge. It's much like playing golf. If you're a pro golfer, you'll never ever beat the game, but you'll get close to, not perfection, but you'll always aspire to perfection.
And then if there's anyone watching, because I know a lot of people who kind of follow my stuff are really into their kind of photography, and I see a lot of pictures of F1 cars popping up. Do you have any particular words of advice or suggestions for anyone who's maybe looking to get into photography within kind of motorsport as a capacity?
Oh, motorsport, yeah. I actually used to go down the freeway and just practice panning with cars on the freeway, because that is the hardest thing to do, to be able to read a car and know that it slows down at that point. So you've got to slow your pan down and just practice and practice and practice, and then look at everybody's shots, because I'm pretty confident in saying that anybody who goes into this the first time and starts shooting cars will want to shoot at 1,000th of a second, and they'll want the car sharp because it looks great, except it looks like the thing's parked. And that's the real challenge, is to not have a too fast shutter speed. So really 3/20ths allows some sort of motion in the tyres, and you can normally nail a sharp shot. That once you get down to 1/8 of a second, completely different ball game. That's, for me, 1 in 50, and for the good guys it might be 1 in 15, and perhaps, I don't even know. Not too many will say what their hit rate is, but it gets very difficult once you start going slower, especially with a wide angle lens. You can shoot slow with a long lens when the car's a long way away.
Yeah.
For some reason, that's easier to get a car sharp, but 16 to 35mm lens, panning with it, very difficult at a slow shutter speed.
Absolutely. I've done a little bit myself, and I know it's to get that one. Oh, it's incredibly challenging. So I can very much imagine. So I guess let's get away from F1 and photography for a little bit. In terms of your other business ventures, so obviously I know you're founder and MD of Messages on Hold, as you've mentioned before, and Canity Training as well. Could you just give everyone a bit of background on those businesses? Like, when did you start them? Like, what are they kind of in, and how is that related to you, I guess?
Well, I worked at a television station as an audio engineer for 2 years and then got unceremoniously sacked. And I had nothing else to do, so I went out and I had this idea to do this in-store radio show for a jeans company that had 100 stores around Australia, and bugger me, they said, yeah, we'll take it. So I landed on my feet with this contract to do this in-store radio, because I've always done radio. I was a radio announcer for 4 or 5 years. And then I thought, well, if I get sacked from that, what am I going to do? And then I was on hold one day at American Express, and I could hear some advertising while I was waiting on hold, and I thought, I can do that. Yep. I can voice it, I can write it, I could do the whole lot. So I thought, right, well, let's start that. And I did a brochure, and I called the business Messages on Hold, because that's what it is. And I got a client, and I got 2 clients, and in the end, we got thousands, and we have clients all over the world, mostly in our Asia Pacific region, but 50 odd staff, as many as 90 about 6-7 years ago, but we pared it back. Offices in Perth and in Singapore, just doing on-hold messages. And then I decided I'd try this online staff training program, which we produce in-house, and it's going really well. And funnily enough, almost all of our business, probably 80% of our business, comes out of America, and in American dollars, which is so valuable to us given our low Australian dollar rate at the moment. And that's just taken off. So that's canity.com. They sponsor me with my travels and with some of my YouTube stuff. It's just been a dream run. Look, we've copped a hit like everybody else in this particular time, but we'll bounce back, and hopefully it allows me to keep going with F1.
You know what? I'm not surprised, Kym, that you've done voiceovers, because you've definitely got the voice for it. I can just picture being on the phone and just having Kym Illman. So what's the most strangest or most unique? So is it so a brand will come to you and say, right, this is the advert, and then you will voice their product or service, right? So what's the kind of strangest or weirdest one?
Well,
is there any weird ones?
We provide the equipment if they need it. We provide the script writing, the voicing, the production, and the maintenance of the whole thing. So we've got a few brothels that come to us and
nice.
Yeah, and they say, right, we want to promote this, and then we've got to be very careful about our writers, because some of them will have issues with that, and so we say, right, well, don't give it to that young lady to write, and don't give it to that guy to voice. But that and funeral homes, look, it's across every business. It's really, there's no business, if you have incoming callers and you put them on hold, there's no business that doesn't need on-hold messages. It's as simple as that. Some don't care about their clients and find that they're at their own whim there to continue on. But if you care about your clients and you care about your business and you want to promote your products and services to a captive audience, there's no better way, because it's virtually free advertising. You just pay for the ads to be produced, and you've got the airtime for nothing.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense, Kym. And then in terms of, and again, I was doing a bit of research, and there's been a few mentions of guerrilla marketing. I've seen a few images of Messages on Hold foam hands being held at a West Coast Eagles game. Give a little context to that, because my family are Melbourne and St Kilda fans, but I did go to Melbourne versus West Coast Eagles game. That's not the last time I went to Australia, the time before that, and you guys absolutely destroyed Melbourne, because Melbourne were really bad at the time. But yeah, in terms of your kind of, what's the kind of guerrilla marketing story behind that? And is it, do you guys sponsor West Coast Eagles? Was that a thing you used to do, or what's the...
Well, let me take you back to the very start. I went to a grand final in '91 in Melbourne, where West Coast Eagles, who I was following, were playing Hawthorn. And I paid some kids $5 each to hold up these Messages on Hold signs. I said, right, there's $5 each, you get another $5 at the end of the game if you do a good job. And they were down on the fence on the half-forward flank, not a great spot. So got no value out of that, really. And then when I got back, about halfway through the year, the next year, I thought, right, I'm going to go down, I'm going to find some kids to stand behind the goals where I know there's an absolute shot to be had every time there's a goal kicked. Paid them $5 each, and for the first game, it was fantastic. Second game, fantastic. Third game, I went to the local paper and said, I've got a story for you. I'm the guy behind this, and it's a free advertising campaign. Well, that ran on the Sunday in the paper, and the Sunday afternoon there was a game, and all those kids got their signs taken off them. I was very dark about that. So I went down and I had a chat with the guy that had taken the signs, and he said, no, you've got to have a chat to management on Monday. So I chatted to management on Monday, and I said I wanted them back, and they said, don't come back. So I got the signs back. Back the next week. Same thing happens again, and I got taken off, and I did it a third time, and they were taken off us, and then the guy from the West Coast Eagles rang and said, why don't you become a sponsor and you can go and do that for real and not have to worry about security. I said, fine. So I had a very small sponsorship deal, but we were always the people with these big messages on hold hands behind the goals at every West Coast Eagles game from 92 until end of 2017. I gave it away, I think. And then, of course, the Eagles won the premiership in 2018, so I picked a bad year to give it up. And the other Perth team, Fremantle Dockers, I sponsored them for 5 years as well. Mm-hmm. But then we do other things, like we go along to the Melbourne Cup, which has a huge cut-through on television. It's a horse race. And I'd pay a guy to go and stand up behind this guy in the bookmaker's ring 3 minutes before the start of the race. And they cross to him, he gives them an update on the odds, and my guy just stands there and holds his sign up right over his shoulder. Our phones went berserk, mainly with angry callers. But we've always been very clever at getting free publicity, mainly through ambushing television. But then if I go back to, I can't even remember what year, but it was when Arrows were racing in F1. I contacted someone, I said, right, I have a girl who'll be body painted. She'll be nude, but she's going to be body painted with a race suit on. I said, right, we want her, get her in. So I got her in, luckily, we had a bit of drama, and got photos of Jos Verstappen with another driver who I can't remember. Beautiful that year, great shots, and I thought, well, this is great. I'm a part of the media, and I'm getting all this free publicity, and I'd sold ads to a few sponsors of mine on there, and then the next year I came back and did another stunt. I think the girl had tyre tracks marked across her body, and then the third year was a girl who, I can't even remember what that one was, but 3 years in a row I got this extraordinary media exposure. Now I'm on the other side. Now I'm taking photos of other people doing media stunts.
I love this, Kym. You've definitely got what's the term I'm looking for? You definitely like, let's talk about your Christmas lights for those who don't know. Is that something you still indulge in every year? Because, I guess you can explain for those who don't know about Kym Illman's famous Christmas lights. Yeah, I got excited one year. My wife put some up, and it must have been about 2008, 2009, and they're okay. And then I found some stuff online. I thought, oh, we're wasting our time doing that. So I thought, right, next year we're going to do something special. So I bought some software and a whole lot of lights, and I did this synchronized show. It was good, and we raised a lot of money for charity, got a bit of exposure, and it was quite fun. We go out every night, probably for 15 nights before Christmas, and all these people had come past, and it was lovely. So they did the next year, got it bigger, and teed it up with my neighbour across the road, and we had both houses synchronised. Then the third year, maybe fourth, it was 2012, I think. I had this house here in Lancelin, so I'd spend most of my weekends here, and you can't leave a Christmas light show down in Perth not running on the weekend, because people come along and they get pissed off, or they come along and watch the lights and then wreck them and all sorts of stuff. So I decided I would do this Gangnam style soundtrack, put it up. Ellen ran it on her show in America, and it just went crazy. So I did 3 nights at home with people coming past very early in December, and the crowds were the same as Christmas Eve on previous years, but for 20 days before Christmas. And I thought, right, we can't handle this now. What's it going to be like at Christmas? So it was only up 3 nights, and I took it all down. And then I got another news story out of that, hey, he's only had it up for 3 nights and he's taken it down because it was too popular. Extravagant, Kym. I love it. That I would have loved to have. There used to be someone near where I grew up who used to have extravagant lights. But I'll put some video on screen because these are just on another level. I heard you say in one of the interviews in terms of the electricity cost, it was less than
nothing.
Was it a couple of
Absolutely nothing. It's all LEDs and might have been $10 a night if it was that. More so, it was
amazing.
In fact, I had a very good friend, one of your countrymen, who I flew out one year, maybe 2011, because he helped me set up in 2010. He was brilliant. So in 2011, I actually flew him out from Britain just so because he wanted another holiday, and I put him up, and he and I spent probably 3 or 4 days putting all this stuff up, and we had this Christmas tree that was all synced, and that's probably 5 or 6 meters tall. It really is an absolute nightmare to run because every strand is all choreographed with the music, and then you'll have something come apart, something not work, and you've got to trace cables back. And the novelty and the fun of it wore off towards the end. However, 2 things. I got a call from some people in Korea, South Korea once, and they said, right, we want you to come over and do a light show for a television commercial. And I thought it was bullshit. And I said, oh yeah, and well, let me know, send me an email.
Yeah,
sent me an email. And I said, right, I want this much money. And it was a lot of money. It would have bought a very nice car. And I thought they're not going to be interested. And they came back and said, can you knock 20% off that? Oh, with pleasure. So I spent 3 weeks, 3 weeks in South Korea doing this, and you can find it online. It's for Paris Baguette Christmas lights. And it was the most remarkable thing because I'd spend a week in the city, have all these meetings in South Korea with my 2 translators, and then we go out to the countryside at some point, and they had a set in the middle of the country, freezing cold at night, and we had to work from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. every night, setting it up for probably 4 nights. And there'd be me, my wife came, a friend of ours, my 2 translators, and an electrician. And 6 or 7 of us, and we just bring in food and drink, and we had the most marvellous time in this field. And I could never have hoped for anything quite so magnificent, all because I'd done this Christmas lights thing.
Amazing. That's pretty incredible. You never know. That's a prime example of you never know where opportunities can open up from your own personal, passion endeavours. Like you were saying about being a hobbyist photographer, and now it's become this massive thing.
Yeah, it always amazes me. In every race that I go to with F1, something happens, and I think at the end of that race, I thought, didn't see that coming. Some driver will ask me to do this, or some sponsor will ask that, and I think I just can't wait to go to another race if we ever see one again to find out what's going to happen at that one.
And then one more question, Kym, and I had to ask this because you are notorious, and I'm so happy you're wearing one today. Kym Illman's scarf collection. Let's have a little chat. First of all, because I'm a sucker for sneakers. I love trainers. I've got so many pairs. But in terms of how many scarves do you own, and do you have a favourite scarf?
I have 3 scarves. My wife would have 100. And so I decided I'd wear a scarf for the first video I did. And I think I wore it for 2 videos, mainly because, I can't even remember why. I just thought, oh, well, I can wear a plain shirt and this will be the colour. And then my general manager, Kirralie Davies, who runs my companies, she said, no, you have to wear one every time. That can be your thing. And I said, all right. I think I've only had one where I haven't worn a scarf, but my wife quite likes these Louis Vuitton ones and Gucci ones, and my son's got a few. And the fact that they're great gifts. And I think as someone looking for a gift for a wife, you can't go wrong with this sort of stuff. You never make a mistake. And obviously when I travel overseas, if I go especially to a cold race like Austin last year, I just bought a Louis Vuitton scarf there, and it was a warm one, and I couldn't believe how lucky I was to have it. And I had to go and buy a pair of gloves the day before and a beanie. When I arrived another time I arrived into Moscow from, what's the race before? Singapore. And I come from Singapore, and I've looked at Moscow, and for the last week it's been 19, 20 degrees. I thought, oh, that's fine. Got one long sleeve jumper, that'll be fine. I land on the runway and the guy said, oh, it's -3 here. Far out. I got one long sleeve jacket, but luckily I had a scarf, and then I went and bought a nice Moncler jacket as a gift for me.
Decent. So everyone watching, get on the scarves. And Kym, do you have a dream scarf? What would be the colour, the material? How long would it be? Do you have like a grail of scarves?
I don't like the square ones because they're hard to fold. I like the ones that are rectangle, and I like these lighter ones like this with lots of writing on it and a bit of colour. I've got a pink Gucci one that's pink and blue, but
nice.
it's very warm and really. And people say, what do you got a scarf on inside for? I said, so that you ask why you're wearing a scarf. That's why I wear them.
Always extravagant, Kym.
Always. No, you can't be predictable, and in this game you have to stand out. Look, there's a million photos of cars, and my photos of cars are no better than anyone else's, and often not even up to par. So I've got to look for stuff that no one else is shooting. And that's when I go to the track and I see 3 or 4, 5 or 6, 7 photographers there, I think, oh, what's the point? Do I really want to stand there and get the same shots as them? Sometimes I do, because I think, well, it's still a good shot, even if there's 6 or 7 of us trying for it. But yeah, I tend to look for stuff that many other people are doing.
Absolutely. Because I've heard you mention, we'll get back onto that, in terms of the actual photographs that you take, you now edge towards the people and the drivers, because I do think ultimately, like you've said again, like there's countless pictures of Formula One cars that exist from pretty much every conceivable angle. But in terms of capturing those real moments, the emotions and I don't know, there's something because what was the race where Ocon took out Max when he was lapping
Brazil
in Interlagos? Was that 2017?
Yep, 2017 Brazil.
Did you manage to capture any of that drama?
I was on the corner where it happened, and I got shots of. I think I was shooting at a slow shutter speed, so they weren't terribly sharp. But I was there, and it was quite exciting. But I didn't get the fisticuffs afterwards.
Because that's the real human emotion. That's why Netflix, like the Drive to Survive series, did that. That's the biggest strength, I think, in that, because it is actually telling the real stories behind. Like, the more that we can, as fans, engage and get an insight into the real emotions of these drivers as human beings, and obviously your work as well, taking these shots and really candid. Do you have a particular kind of, I know you said the Renault shot is your kind of favourite, but do you have a particular human shot that stands out as being a real, corker?
I have a few. I really enjoyed shooting Nico Hülkenberg after his last race last year, because I was the only one at the back of the FIA garage. So if you wanted any shots of that, I had them. No one else had them. Or if you want shots of the podium, there would have been 100 photographers with podium shots. So he's come out, he's given his trainer a hug, he's given his PR girl a hug, he's given his social media guy a hug, but his girlfriend Eglay wasn't there, or Sunny. And I thought, oh, well, I'll follow, because I knew she was at the track, and we'd spoken earlier on, and I get on very well with her. She's a lovely girl. And I thought, oh, I'll follow him because he might meet up. And of course, they do meet up, and I get these beautiful shots, and it's just pure emotion. And he was always very cagey about being shot with girlfriends. Would never go too close to them in the paddock. I got, I think, 1 or 2 shots with them near each other in my 2 years prior, and then he walked in and he saved it for me, and I was so thankful that he waited until he got past the main throng, and then he teamed up with her and put his arm around her and walked towards me, which was nice, because I've developed a nice relationship with him. And then I've got shots of Charles hugging Seb in Bahrain. No, Seb was behind Charles and was consoling him in Bahrain in 2019, which was a great moment. All the stuff out on the track prior to, or just after Antoine Hubert's death, when his mother was hugging the drivers in the lower ranks, and Charles as well. That was really powerful stuff. When Mattia Binotto was hugging Charles in the Monza paddock after he'd won. And you get those shots just by pure fluke. You see him coming, because I was following him, and then I looked at him, right, I've got to be over here because I think this is going to happen here. And sometimes it works for you, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they both peel off and go somewhere else, and you think, oh, I thought you were coming over here.
You can only be in one place at once, like you said, Kym. You can't be everywhere at once, which is a shame. But brilliant. Well, I think that's kind of, in terms of the bulk of the questions, we've covered everything I wanted to there. So now we're going to get onto a quick fire round. It's just a bit of fun. I've got a few questions. I've catered some of these towards you. But generally, they're pretty much the same questions I ask everyone. So, Kym Illman, are you ready?
Commence.
What is your favourite flavour of potato chip? I don't know what you call it in Australia.
Salt and vinegar.
Potato chip.
Salt and vinegar.
Salt and vinegar. Interesting. Good lad. Good lad. I don't mind salt and vinegar. They're all right. What is your favourite television show of all time?
At the moment, probably 30 Rock.
Okay. I like 30 Rock. Favourite sport outside of Formula One?
Oh, Australian rules football.
West Coast Eagles fan, I'm assuming.
As an ex-sponsor, I'm still a fan, although I must say, I don't think I've watched a game in the last 2 years. So I'm out of sorts in that way because I've been just so much travel with F1.
Of course, absolutely. It has to take a back seat because of how just time-inducive F1 is. Do you have a favourite road car of all time, if you could own any car?
I've got a 911 Turbo, and I don't think I'll ever sell it, so I'm going to say that.
Decent. Very. What year? How old? How old is it?
It's 10 years old now.
What colour?
Silver. Is it silver?
Silver? Yeah. Oh, I'm surprised. I thought it'd been something a bit more out there and extravagant.
It's just silver, and it sits inside my house because I've got a garage that is inside the house. So you sit in the lounge room in Perth and you look through this glass window and there's this beautiful Porsche there, and I've got these lovely canvas prints on the wall, which are my shots from F1. And that's a great way for people to use my images by going to prostarpics.com. You can buy the digital images, you can print them large on canvas and do it like I've done in my garage.
Absolutely. There's a lot to be said for printing. I think print's become a little bit of a lost art, but there's so much in terms of, and yes, I will all the links to all of Kym's stuff will be down below. Be sure to check them out. Kym, who is your favourite band / artist of all time, music-wise?
I'm going to say the Beatles because I played the piano and I recently bought a Beatles book, and I just realised now how much great music they produced and how timeless it is.
Absolutely. Legends, absolute Liverpudlian. Have you ever been to Liverpool?
I've not been to Liverpool, but I did meet George Harrison one night during a Grand Prix in Adelaide. He was having dinner with Jackie Stewart, Johnny Herbert and Damon Hill at La Casalinga restaurant, and I was dining at the same restaurant, and I went into town and I got a poster. This was 20, 30 years ago. And I came back and everyone else was going up and asking him for autographs during dinner, and he was just telling them to piss off. And I waited until the very end of the night, and I went outside, and as they all came out, there was a table out, and they said, "Oh, boys, can I grab a quick signature?" I got all 4 or 5, however many it was, and that was a lovely piece of memorabilia. And George I've met, and I was a guest of Paul McCartney at his concert in Mexico through his security man.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Bit better than going to Liverpool then. So you've actually met the guys. So Kym, you've found yourself on death row because, you accidentally formatted your SD card without exporting, which is punishable by death, of course. What is your final meal on death row? Tricky one, this.
The first thing that comes to mind is Jamie Oliver's pasta.
Oh, he's an Essex boy like myself, Jamie Oliver.
Well, we've got a Jamie's restaurant in Perth. I do hope it's not owned by him anymore. He's not got a say in it. But I quite like that pasta with the tagliatelle and the ragu on it. But look, I'd probably find something a little bit more interesting, but that's what comes straight to my head.
There you go. Oh, that's good. That's what I like. Instinct. Kym, cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Any particular breeds?
Yeah, I've got a beautiful toy poodle or a miniature, one or the other. It's a very clever dog, communicates with us. A real joy to be around.
Dogs are great. I had cats growing up, but I've got a little dog now, and he's the most perfect thing in the world. So, alcoholic beverage of choice. If Kym's nice evening, what are you drinking?
I used to drink Jamison's, but as a teenager, I drank Southern Comfort, and I've since, probably in the last 3 years, gone back to Southern Comfort. Although it's a bastard to find when I travel, I can barely find it anywhere. And it becomes now this little bit of a challenge to go into almost every bottle shop and every bar just to see if they've got it on the shelf.
Brilliant, love it. Yeah, I think it's quite. I think it's quite available in the UK. So be sure to stock up next time you're at Silverstone.
Have you ever spoken to Mark Arnold, Kymmy's trainer?
Mark Arnold. That name really rings a bell. Why does that ring a bell?
Kymmy's trainer, Mark, the bald guy.
No, I haven't.
Well, Mark and I have a very funny story about Southern Comfort at the Palazzo Tangara Hotel in Brazil. So if you ever get speaking to him, ask him about that. He'll laugh.
I'll be sure to ask him. That's a nice little segue. I like that. What is your favourite subject? So it could be an F1 car, it could be a hippo, it could be anything. What's your favourite subject that you've ever kind of shot, or favourite subject to shoot?
A Czech model, nude in a meat cabinet in Lancelin here. I had this idea, I'd seen something similar, and I thought, right, I brought her from Sydney, and we were going to do this shot in the meat cabinet where she lies nude with all this meat around her. And then she said, well, do you want to paint on the different cuts of meat on my body? Great idea. So we had flank, we had breast, shin, whatever. And if you look up Lancelin butcher model on the internet, you'll see that picture, and it's a cracker. And it caused all sorts of drama with people getting all puritanical on us, and what about the meat, and just crazy sort of comments. But yeah, that was a great shot.
That's the perfect kind of extract of this podcast to clip up and put at the start to get people to watch through to the end. Kym.
Yep.
You never cease to amaze me. You should write a book. You should absolutely write a book. I hope that will come one day.
What would it be on?
It's just the life and times of Kym Illman. The time that I painted a naked Czech woman.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Would it sell? I don't know that it would sell. Maybe I could give it away.
Absolutely. You've got 100k on Instagram, Kym. I'm sure you'd be able to push a few there towards it. And then my last quickfire question: who is the most photogenic Formula One driver?
I always love shooting Nico. Daniel's often smiley, which is lovely. Yeah, I reckon it's a toss-up between Charles and Lando, and probably Charles because it's Ferrari and it has perhaps a bigger audience. But I like Charles. He's a good photographic subject.
Good, nice, handsome lad he is. He's literally he's living the dream. I'm not going to lie. Absolutely living the dream. So, Kym, a few more little round-up questions. I ask these to everyone. So first and foremost, if you were Kym Carey, so you had the moustache, you were in charge of Formula One, what do you think, if you could enact one rule change to the sport in any capacity, whether it's the racing, behind the scenes, whatever, what would you change that you think would improve the sport?
You bring the grid girls back, definitely.
Did you? I suppose, yeah, because when did they leave? That was
2018. I had 2017, and they were always.
So you had 1 year of grid girls.
I know, and the ones in Russia, the very best. Although the Brazilian ones were always brilliant. Where else? They're the two that stand out. But I always loved it. On a Saturday night, you go down, you'd photograph them doing their warm-ups and getting ready for the next day, and they added some colour on the grid. But yeah, as you know, they've now gone by the wayside.
Indeed they have. Also, in terms of the future of Formula One, and obviously I think that, the next 10, 20 years are going to be arguably the most challenging for the sport beyond this whole virus situation, just in terms of electric, like Formula E coming up and all of the politics around that. How do you see the sport evolving and changing? Do you foresee maybe a merger with Formula E down the line? What do you think is going to happen going forward?
I'm clueless with that, absolutely clueless. I really would love to see some overtaking, like they have in NASCAR and all those sort of other forms of racing. to me, it's just too much of a procession. And if you get
Yep.
5 overtakes in a race, that's a good race. I think, well, that's boring. And I know there's a lot of, and Daniel's father, Joe Ricardo, often tells me he loves all the finer stuff, like the pit stops and all the strategies and the drama. But for someone like me, when I'm out on track, I don't see all that stuff. And often we have scant idea really of what's going on. Because they're just coming past and you're walking around, and sometimes you get the feed in your ear from BBC Live 5 at Live, whatever it is, but oftentimes that doesn't work because of the internet. So we're just clueless in many instances unless we can see a screen or someone tips us off. So yeah, I'd like some more excitement. I'd like Hockenheim every race, and I'd like the last few laps of the Brazilian GP every race. That would be fantastic, and for the crowd as well.
That would be. And then last question, Kym. Last but by no means least, and I know you're a visual man. You've got an eye for detail. What is your favourite of the 2020 Formula One car liveries? Of the 10 liveries on show, which one for you is number one?
AlphaTauri, as they say. It's easy to photograph because it's got lots of contrast in it, and I just like the look of the thing. I don't mind the Racing Point, Force India, whatever it is, because it's quite bold. I don't like shooting the Mercedes ever. It's hard to shoot because it hasn't got much contrast in it. Ferrari's always good, but not much different to past years. So yeah, I think the AlphaTauri, for me, is the standout one that, oh, that's interesting when I first saw it.
Interesting. Makes sense. A lot of everyone watching will know that that's my least favourite livery.
There you go.
But obviously, you highlight a very good point. The contrast. That's it. Again, this is what's important. You have a different perspective on these things because of the nature of what you do. Like the Mercedes looks nice, but again, your average fan isn't going to recognise that the lack of contrast is going to be a difficulty for you, Mr. Kym Illman. But yeah, we're done. So. Thank you very much, Kym, for taking the time. I really do appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed this chat.
Well, I'm an expert on me, so I don't think you're speaking to a better man than me if you want to talk about me. And my wife's happy that I'm not talking about me to her. So, Tom, you've saved her a couple of hours.
Absolutely. And for everyone who's watching as well, just let everyone know what you're on, your socials, all that kind of stuff. I'll let you take that away.
Yeah, my main focus is Instagram at Kym Illman. I'm doing YouTube, obviously, which is just Kym Illman. And you'll see all of my pics that you can download and buy, or prints if you live in Australia, at prostarpics.com. And you'll find my blogs and podcasts at kymillman.com, along with some other stuff that you might find interesting about Lancelin, messages on hold, and a whole lot of other stuff.
Amazing. As I said before, I'll link to everything in the description below. Thank you very much again, Kym. And have a good evening, mate. Thanks again.
Thank you to you.